Who am I, I've asked myself lately, to tell a story about breastfeeding? I'm a single woman with no kids yet. Therefore, I don't know what it's like to breastfeed, and I was never breastfed as a child. I don't recall seeing any women breastfeed in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or in my family's home country of Antigua. I'm sure there were women doing so, but I just don't remember seeing it. My first experience with breastfeeding was when I was a pediatric resident almost 15 years ago in New York City. And so my story with breastfeeding is less about a physical experience, but more about a personal relationship that I have with the neighborhood. But it's also a story about freedom and self-determination. And it starts on the A train. The A train is part of... Hurry! The A train is part of the world's largest subway system. It carries New Yorkers from northern Manhattan to South Brooklyn over to Queens. And it opened in 1932. In that same year, Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn... You think I was about to... Yeah. In that same year, Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn immortalized the A train in their way to get to Harlem in their song, Take the A Train. It's not quite working. But in 1936, there was a crucial addition to the line that allowed blacks the freedom in Harlem to migrate from one part of the city and settle into another part of the city called Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, also known as Bed-Stuy. It cultivated another center of black culture in New York City, because prior to that, blacks were not allowed to live, to rent, or to own in most parts of New York City. And so the A train became a symbol of music and migration, representing the freedom to move from place to place, and the freedom to build and celebrate communities, because blacks could buy homes. Fast forward to 2004, the A train takes on another significance and becomes a vehicle for activism and breastfeeding freedom. It is the start of New York City's breastfeeding subway caravan, where women, children, families, activists board the train at its starting point and exercise their New York state-given right to breastfeed anytime, any place, and anywhere. Imagine on a crowded plane, crowded train, on 100 people chanting, breastfeeding, anytime, anywhere, any place. They stop at City Hall, they pick up more advocates, and then they head to Bed-Stuy, where they exit the train and march by foot to Restoration Plaza to meet activists from all across the city for their final rally of the day. Restoration Plaza sits in the heart of Bed-Stuy. It is also home to the nation's first local community development corporation, co-founded by Bobby Kennedy. Bed-Stuy is known for its beautiful brownstones and its rich cultural and political history, and claims the likes of Shirley Chisholm, baseball legend Jackie Robinson, rapper Notorious B.I.G., and comedian Chris Rock. But Bed-Stuy also suffers from severe blight, as many urban neighborhoods across this country that have been historically deprived of resources due to bad policies and practices created by systems of unbalanced power and privilege such as racism. Bed-Stuy has over 150,000 residents. 17% of them are unemployed, while a third of them live in poverty. Bed-Stuy's life expectancy is 11 years shorter than those residents who live in the financial district off of Wall Street. And babies are 5 times more likely to die within their first year of age as compared to babies in the neighborhood with the lowest infant mortality rate. And when we look at breastfeeding, only 4.3% of moms are exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months. We talk to moms. We know they face barriers similar to the barriers that other women face. Lack of support, lack of commitment. We had community providers who would say, our moms don't need breastfeeding, they need jobs. These barriers suppress freedom. Our moms didn't feel that they had the freedom to determine how best to use their own bodies in their own neighborhoods. So, 3 years ago, we started the Brooklyn Breastfeeding Empowerment Zone that brought together people from many different sectors to build support within the neighborhood. And the neighborhood was the focus. Not one person, not one organization, but the neighborhood. A neighborhood approach meant we had to shift responsibility and blame away from moms and focus it on all of us. So government, faith institutions, business owners, elected officials, all of us have responsibility in creating healthy neighborhoods. No justice-based movement was created or sustained by one person or one type of person. Harriet Tubman had help. She had a whole bunch of allies and unusual suspects to create opportunities to free slaves. And so we knew our neighborhood approach from learning from the life of Harriet Tubman needed to appreciate that the freedom to move and the freedom to breastfeed was not going to happen by a singular voice, but a community of allies, both expected and unexpected. And our job was to find them. So we spoke to partners, and we started to train anybody who was interested to become community breastfeeding advocates, nearly 200 people. We trained 60 women to become doulas, as well as lactation consultants, and we engaged men as equal caregivers through our programs of home visiting, Dr. Dads, and Iron Chef Dads, so that they felt more comfortable with the experience. And we engaged faith-based institutions, over 20 of them, to implement breastfeeding policies. This was a tremendous collective effort. But our greatest allies, unexpectedly, came from our elected officials who happened to be men. Our New York City councilman, who was local, proud father of 6, proud resident of Bed-Stuy, remembers watching his wife struggle through breastfeeding their 6 children, including a set of twins. And he said, "My wife's an accountant, and her job was unsupportive. Imagine what it's like for my constituents who have less." And so his way to show commitment and support to moms and babies within Bed-Stuy was to do 3 things. He launched the first food festival in Bed-Stuy. He hosted a series of Know Your Rights workshops around breastfeeding, and he opened Brooklyn's first community lactation station from his office right in Restoration Plaza. But then his colleagues followed suit. A New York State Assemblyman also opened a community lactation station from his office, and our own Brooklyn Borough president, who touches 2 million people, not only did he open a community lactation station in Borough Hall, but he launched Family Friendly Brooklyn, which asked for and called for the expansion of the breastfeeding empowerment zone in other neighborhoods across Brooklyn. We finally felt our advocacy was picking up steam. And then we got derailed a little bit. We wanted to work with businesses. We wanted to work with businesses to create breastfeeding-friendly spaces, to train the employers about employees' rights around breastfeeding, and then also place decals in the window so these spaces were recognizable. We approached the director of the Business Improvement District, and while supportive, he just couldn't see the value and the role that businesses could play in breastfeeding. He was advocating for more police protection and loans. Well, in calling upon the power and the energy of the coalition's group of the Empowerment Zone, we had community activists, male paraeducators, doulas go straight to the businesses and share their testimonies. And by the end of the campaign, 56 businesses signed on to become breastfeeding-friendly spaces with the logo on the window. It is through these collective efforts that we are starting to see changes in the women's freedom and comfort to breastfeed. It is through these collective efforts that we create power and opportunity for our neighbors to determine what can happen in their neighborhoods. Many of us are leaders, and we are very passionate about the important work that we do. However, we cannot continue to work in our silos of operation. We must move beyond simple partnerships to better coordinate, align, and build shared agendas that not only promote breastfeeding, but also think about what do we need to do to change the cultural, political, environmental, and structural systems in which people live, especially in the context of their neighborhoods. We must find the courage and the curiosity to seek out allies that are both expected and unexpected and ask them to join our movement. Every day, I pull my courage from the many families that are fighting for their families in the face of injustice. So who are your allies? Who haven't you asked to join our movement? And where will you pull that courage from? Audre Lorde said, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different than my own." So I ask again, who am I? I am a community of allies who are women who have never breastfed, who are women who struggle to breastfeed but will succeed, who are the elected officials who will advocate for policy change, and who are the business owners who will listen to their customers. We are the A train that will move people from place to place, and we are the Bed-Stuy neighborhood that will be able to determine its future. It's up to all of us to stand together for every woman in every neighborhood, and only then can we be free. Thank you.